Hello and welcome back. This is another sixth grade math video. And this video, we're going to be focusing on reviewing all the different operations we would do with decimals, adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. Okay, here is the first problem we're going to be doing together. We're going to be taking the number 3.9 and dividing it by 3. Okay, so let's go ahead and try this one. I'm going to put the first number, which is 3.9, inside the division bracket and put 3 on the outside. Now, before I even begin to divide, I'm going to move that decimal up into the answer space right above where it is in the problem. That way the decimal is already placed and I no longer have to worry about it as I finish my problem. 3 goes into 3 one time, so I'm going to put that 1 up here. 1 times 3 is 3. And when I subtract that, I get 0 left over. I'm going to go ahead and bring down the 9. 3 fits into 9 3 times, so I'm going to put a 3 up here. 3 times 3 is 9, and when I subtract that, I have 0 left over. So now when we're dividing with decimals, we can no longer get remainders. So in this case, we have no remainder and no more numbers to bring down, which means we're finished. The answer here would be 1.3. Okay, here is our next one. We're going to take the number 2.9 and we're going to multiply it by 0.6. Again, this video is just a quick review of all the 4 different operations and how we deal with those when we have decimals involved. So if you're ever interested in seeing more examples or more in-depth look at how we do a particular operation, please refer to some of my earlier videos. So 2.9 is what I'll put on the top, and 0.6 goes on the bottom. So when I multiply these, I don't need to worry about the decimals right now. I will deal with those later. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and erase them. I'm also going to erase this 0 right here because a 0 in front of a number, we don't really need. So I'm just going to go ahead and multiply 29 times 6. 9 times 6 is 54, so I'd put a 4 here and a 5 up here. 2 times 6 is 12, and 12 plus 5 is 17. So I'd end up with 174. Now it's time for me to deal with the decimal. So what I'm going to do is come and put a decimal after my answer, after I finished multiplying. And then I'm going to move that decimal into the left, the same number of spaces as I had decimals in my original problem. So in the original problem, I had a 9 in the decimal place value and a 6 in the decimal place value. That's 2 decimals in the original problem, which means I need to move this decimal for the answer into the left 2 spaces and put it there. So that means my answer to this is going to be 1.74. Okay, here is our next one. For this next one, we're going to take the number 9.9 and we're going to add it to the number 6.9. So whenever you're adding or subtracting decimals, it is important to line your numbers up on top of each other or stack them, as I've heard this called, by place value. Make sure everything's lined up. So I'm going to start by taking that first number, which is 9.9, and just writing it here in my workspace. And then I'm going to put a decimal right under the decimal for the top number. I'm going to put my line, my plus sign, and then another decimal down here in the answer space. That way I can make sure all the decimals are lined up. Now for the second number, it's 6.9, which means a 6 goes on the left side of the decimal and a 9 goes on the right side of the decimal. Now I know everything is lined up by place value. 9 plus 9 is 18, so I'm going to put an 8 here and regroup the 1. 1 plus 9 is 10, and 10 plus 6 is 16, so there's going to be 16 over here. So now my final answer is going to be 16.8. Okay, here is our next one. This is a subtraction one. We're going to take 24.4 and we're going to subtract 12.2 from that. So let's go ahead and line these up again by decimal place values. I'm going to take that first number, which is 24.4, and then I'm going to subtract 12.2 from that. Now, what I could do is just write it like this, or after I wrote that first number, I could go ahead and put decimals here and here. 1 for the second number and 1 for the answer space, but making sure everything is lined up. Then the second number has a 12 before the decimal, so that's what I would put here, and a 2 after the decimal. So let's go ahead and start subtracting. 4 minus 2 is 2. 4 minus 2 is 2 again, and 2 minus 1 is 1. Our final answer is going to be 12.2. Okay, here is our last example for this video. We're going to take the number 356.82 and we're going to divide it by 0.5 or 0.5. Now, this originally was divided by 5, but I decided to add the points so that we could talk about and review how to deal with it when you're taking a decimal and dividing it by another decimal. Okay, so let's start by taking that 356.82 and putting it inside the division bracket. And then we're going to put 0.5 on the outside. So I don't want to actually divide by a decimal. It's not really a fun thing to do. So I'm going to go ahead and pick another color so I can show you how I move that decimal. Let's do this color. I'm going to move it over here so that it is out of the way. Now I'm dividing by 5 instead of 0.5. But whatever I do to the decimal on the outside, I have to do to the decimal on the inside. So that means if I moved it one space outside, I need to come and move this one space on the inside. Now I can go ahead and put that up into the answer space before I begin my problem. Now this is a little bit messy, so I'm going to go ahead and erase this just so it looks a little bit cleaner to me. If it doesn't bother you, you don't need to remove it. Okay. So 5 does not fit into 3, so I'm going to put a 0 up there to mark that. But 5 does fit into 35 7 times. 7 times 5 is 35. When I subtract that, I get 0 left over. I bring down the 6. 5 does not fit, or it does fit into 6. It's 1 time, so that's going to give me 5. When I subtract that, I get a 1. I'm going to bring down the 8. 5 would go into 18. 3 times, which would give me 15. When I subtract that, I would get 3 left over. Then I'm going to bring down the 2. 5 would fit into 32 6 times, which is 30. When I subtract that, I would get 2 left over down there. So I'm going to move that 2 over here. Now, we've talked about this in some previous videos, but you cannot have a remainder when you're dividing with decimals. So since we have a remainder of 2 here, I'm going to need to add a 0 to the end of that 2 to make it 20 and keep dividing. So 5 fits into 20 4 times, and then 5 times 4 is exactly 20. When I subtract that, I get 0 left over. So now I can be finished because there are no more numbers to bring down and I have no remainder. So the answer here would be 713.64. All right, you guys, thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope to see you in another video soon.